Hi, I'm Richard Davies, host of the podcast How Do We Fix It?, where we report on the people, projects, and ideas of braver angels. Listen and subscribe to our shows wherever you get your podcasts. So far, we've recorded more than 36 episodes, all about braver angels. Most are less than 30 minutes long. Again, our podcast is How Do We Fix It?, and our website is howdowefixit.me.
Paid protesting. Just those two words probably trigger something. Outrage, suspicion, or maybe confirmation of what you already believed. But almost nobody talking about it has ever actually organized one. My guest today has organized hundreds on both sides of the political spectrum. And what he has to say about who's really funding the chaos in our streets might not be what you expect. Stick with me. Welcome back, my friends, to the D-Rate the Hate podcast. I'm your host, Wilk Wilkinson, your blue-collar sage, calming outrage and helping to navigate a world divided by fog and those who would spread that fear, outrage, and grievance. The D-Rate the Hate podcast is proudly produced in collaboration with Braver Angels, America's largest grassroots, cross-partisan organization working towards civic renewal. This podcast amplifies the mission that we share to foster a more respectful and united America where civic friendship thrives even when we disagree. Each week, through the power of story, conversation, and connection with incredible guests, we work to build bridges instead of barriers. Not to change minds on the issues, but to change how we see one another when we differ. Because, friends, it really is about bettering the world one attitude at a time. We did not create the hate, but together we can derate the hate. So be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, share it with a friend, and visit braverangels.org to learn how you can get involved in the movement to bridge the partisan divide. Friends, I am so incredibly grateful that you have joined me for another powerful D-Rate the Hate episode. So let's get to it. Adam Swart is the founder of Crowds on Demand, the original paid protesting and advocacy firm. For more than a decade, he's been on the inside of an industry most people only see from the outside, organizing high-profile campaigns across the political spectrum. That experience has made him one of the most sought-after voices on how modern protests actually get funded, coordinated, and used for political and media impact. You've probably seen him on Fox News, News Nation, or Newsmax, where his takes tend to go viral because he says what most people in this industry won't. Today, Adam walks us through what paid protesting actually is versus what people assume it is. We get into the real difference between a protester, an agitator, and an activist, and why transparency, not suppression, is what protects the right to protest, and what he's watching for as a new wave of nationwide demonstration ramps up. He's even authored legislation aimed at bringing more transparency to how these events get funded. Whether you've never thought twice about who's behind a protest, or you're convinced you already know, this conversation is going to give you a more nuanced picture. Let's get into it with my friend Adam Swart. Here we go. Adam Swart, thank you for joining me on the D-Rate the Hate podcast. It is good to see you today, man.
Wilk, thanks so much for having me. It's great to be with you and, of course, with your loyal audience.
Well, I appreciate you being here, Adam. And first, I just want to, for people who don't know, I guess you're the founder of Crowds on Demand. Is that correct?
That's correct. I've been at it almost 15 years now.
15 years as the founder of Crowds on Demand, and this is a hot topic right now, Adam, because there are and in this politically outrage and grievance driven society that we live in right now, the idea of paid protesting and paid crowds and things like that have been, it's one of those footballs, I think, that gets tossed around. A lot of times I think it's probably being used out of context. That, it really just depends on who's talking about it and in what context they're talking about it. So I want to dive into that with you today, Adam, and really get the skinny on what it is, this crowds on demand thing, what it is that you are doing. I mean, I know you've been on all the major networks. You've talked about this before. You're almost taking this. I mean, as the founder of this organization, it almost feels to me like kind of taking a whistleblower stance. You can tell me if that's right or wrong. But first of all, before we do that, because I always like to get a little bit of the origin story, I like to try and figure out, what drives people to do what they're doing. Most of the time I'm talking to people in the depolarization space and the mindset space and how we do this. But this protesting thing, this is as old as democracy itself. The idea of protesting. We had the civil rights movement, we had women's suffrage, the labor movement, the protests in Vietnam. I mean, we can name any different period in history where protest played a big part of these different civic actions. Mm-hmm. But is paid protesting something new? And what got you specifically into this thing, Adam?
Okay, well, that's a lot of questions in one. So let me I should have taken notes on all that, but a little information on crowds on demand, where, as you alluded to, we organize protests, we organize advocacy events, advocacy campaigns, PR stunts for companies, stuff that has nothing to do with politics. A lot of what we do has absolutely nothing to do with politics. It's either business disputes, we've taken on anything from, environmental issues, LGBT, like anti-discrimination, civil rights cases. I mean, I guess some of that is bordering on politics, marketing for a company, ventures, all of those types of things, right? So I started this, as I said, almost 15 years ago. I started it because I saw there was a real need for manpower, because, as you mentioned Vietnam, you mentioned civil rights, right? From that era where you had very little competition for attention. So it's so easy to get college students out there in the 60s, right? You just have a flyer on the quad and people would turn out in droves. Now this is much harder. There's internet, there's a lot of other competing things. People have become a lot more apathetic. Also, I think people's participation on social media has given them the impression that is participation, so they don't need to go to rallies or protests because social media exists as that outlet. So as a result, there's a huge need for that in-person manpower. Now, one misnomer about our business is, they're like, you pay protesters. That must mean that you're doing the thing that's very unpopular. Actually, quite the opposite. We're generally on the side of what I would call the silent majority, right? Against a vocal minority, because the people who are just working jobs, they have kids, normal people, everyday people, aren't out there saying, I'm going to go to every city council meeting to protest for, let's just insert things that most people want, is well-funded police, responsible police, clean streets, probably no drug addict, junkies on the streets, right? These are things that people support, but the people who support them are not out there every day.
That's right.
So I think that the challenge is that when we are there is to actually convey and act for that silent majority oftentimes, and be that voice. And sometimes those people need incentive. Why do they need incentive? Because if you are a college student, or if you are a retiree, or you're just some wacky person on the street who has nothing better to do, no kids, no responsibilities, you can go attend as many protests, as many city council meetings, no opportunity cost. But if you have a job, an hourly job, and you have kids, the opportunity cost of going to a protest is basically unpaid time plus childcare, right? So how is that fair? And we kind of bridge the gap. So now I started the business hiring actors because, I was in college in Los Angeles. I still get bad press for that. I understand. We still will hire actors for PR stunts, but we don't. When I started the business, I don't really care if people supported the cause or not. I was just providing bodies. Now we've become very focused on providing people who are enthusiastic. Why? Right? Number one, it's genuine. It's an ethical perspective. Number two, it's more effective to have people who are genuinely in support. So I have a team who actually interviews each participant at each event before the event to make sure that they support the cause. And of course, one other misnomer is that we have anything to do with any kind of like riots or whatever.
Illegal activity.
Obviously, we're a business. We would have been shut down a long time ago if we did anything illegal. We're peaceful, respectful protesting. I always say, that doesn't mean that we're not boisterous, but boisterous within what's legally permitted. We would never block off a street without a permit. We don't curse at people. Our focus is respectful First Amendment advocacy, and we're so lucky to live in a country that gives us a huge rights to protest peacefully, lawfully. There's no reason to do things the wrong way.
Right. And let me dive into a couple of those things real quick there, Adam, because this is where and I call them outrage entrepreneurs, grievance grifters.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of these people online they'll look at one of these civic actions of peaceful protest, and they'll look at the thing and they'll automatically dismiss these massive crowds of millions. And I'm going to use. I live in Minnesota. I'm going to take the Operation Ice Out thing, right? They had Operation Metro Surge that was performed by ICE and Customs and Border Protection, and then there was this massive pushback by protesters in Minnesota to do this Operation Ice Out. I think that was the name of it. I'm not positive, and I don't know. You can tell me if you had anybody involved in that. But the bigger question that I have is when people automatically dismiss, or let me step back a second, because there's a couple things that you talked about there, Adam, that I do want to get into. Yeah. But I'm going to kind of go in a roundabout way of getting there. So I just want to qualify that. I want to talk deeper about the younger generation thinking, these kids making the mistake that social media is some kind of action, and the difference in that. I think that's a key point that I want to key on in this conversation. But before we get there, I want to talk about, what you were saying there about, finding people that are passionate, people that are boisterous, but people that are going to be respectful and things like that.
Yes.
Because
so a lot of people think those are mutually exclusive. You have immense right. You can be boisterous. You can be extremely passionate, and actually you're going to be much more effective, because what you don't want to do as a movement is do something that makes your whole movement look bad.
Right.
When you're boisterous, when you're loud but respectful, I always say, in every one of our events, who are we trying to convince? We're trying to convince people, right? And you don't convince people by screaming at them. And you certainly don't convince people by blocking off a road and preventing people from getting to their jobs and their kids and all of that. So we would never affiliate ourselves with that. Now, yep. I think you're kind of alluding to one other question, which is, I think that our politics has gotten so juvenile that people on both, that you've heard the term astroturf, right? Astroturf, right? Mm-hmm. That refers, my definition of astroturf is movements that you disagree with, right? So people who want to dismiss a movement are like, oh, well, that movement, that's a billionaire movement, and our movement, it's all sincere, when we know there are billionaires on both sides, right?
Right.
Like, I'm sorry, this United States of America, we're run by billionaires. I know, Bernie Sanders is backed by billionaires. There's a billionaire running for governor in California whose principal thing is to take on the billionaires, but to supposedly take on the billionaires, he's spending hundreds of millions of his own money. So I'm like, billionaires run this country. So let's just like, first of all, like dispel the idea.
Let's establish that as a baseline, right?
Yeah, so let's establish that as a baseline and not like get into this self-masturbatory thing of thinking that like our movement is like the movement that I agree with is pure and the other side, oh, they're all backed by people. At the end of the day, both sides have money, both sides have moneyed interest. Now, some billionaire backers are sincere in their support and some have ulterior motives, right?
Yeah.
And I would say a vast majority have ulterior motives. It's a combination of having ulterior motives. And I mean, think about the billionaires who backed BLM. A lot of why they backed BLM was so that they themselves wouldn't be called out for their own racist actions, right? That's why a lot of companies backed BLM, right? Now, why do a lot of these companies back Trump, right? Because they don't want him to reprisal, right? So these companies and billionaires are always trying to ride the wave of who's in charge and also trying to change things of who's in charge. So this is how it works. So people who pretend like there's the difference between, oh, our movement is grassroots. It's like, have you looked at your donors? Like, believe me, like any movement that's been at all successful in, you know, gay rights, civil rights, MAGA, Tea Party, whatever, has had a ton of very wealthy people behind it. And, you know, there we go. So this idea of like using this idea of saying, oh, well, he pays crowds and he pays crowds, like you all pay crowd. Everybody pays people. You all have paid lawyers. You all have paid consultants. You all have paid crowd members. Like, let's focus more on, is what you're saying right? So you mentioned ICE, right? Now, let's focus on the issue of ICE. I mean, and I love what you're doing, which is try to depolarize, because a few things can be true at one time. We have a lot of criminal, illegal people who are actually criminals, and I don't mean just having by virtue of crossing the border, but they're people who have committed crimes in the United States, and they need to be sent back or in many cases imprisoned in this country for the crimes that they committed.
Should not be a controversial issue in my opinion.
We should all agree on that. 100. Yep. So my thing is like, let's find that as common ground. I don't know anybody who disagrees that if you commit a crime in the United States, you should be imprisoned in the United States and then sent back to your home country if you are here illegally. Number one. Number two, I think that people who are here lawfully should not be harassed by law enforcement, right? Can we agree on that? Like,
be a fair...
you should not have four people coming out in balaclavas from a black van demanding to see your papers based on nothing more than the color of your skin, right? Like, can we all kind of agree that that's bad?
I would hope that we could, Adam. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people that have not been able to come to that point of common ground, because we live in a time, and this kind of goes back to what I was saying, you know, this time of outrage and I call it fog, fear, outrage, and grievance. But the reality is us versus them tribalism has created this incapacity for people to look at things objectively from multiple angles and
nuance
come to
our side versus your side, right? As an independent, I have no side. I'm not loyal to either of those parties, and they're both very corrupt. And the reality is, my take on it is that, and you kind of mentioned, oh, are you a whistleblower in this? I mean, my take is, look, protest has the capacity to divide. Yes, it's true. But protest also has the capacity, especially our kind of work, has the capacity to actually create movements to bring us together. And that's what I'm looking to do, is be part of things of taking on the interests that we all are upset with. Because if you actually talk, and as you have in the course of your work, talk to people, most people agree on basic tenets. Like I said, I think most people agree if you commit a crime in the United States, you should be sent back, right? And imprisoned. Most people agree that you should not be harassed based on the color of your skin, and that there should be kind of due process for people who are detained in the United States. I was asked about by a right-wing podcaster, it's like, do illegal immigrants deserve due process? It's like, well, how do we know they are illegal unless they have due process?
That's a great point.
It's a prerequisite to have due process to determine that they are in fact illegal, because I would not want to be harassed, or you would not want to be harassed on some suspicion of without any reasonable cause. So I think that the reality is that most of us agree, but I think what I'm trying to do is take on these sort of unifying campaigns, right? Interesting campaigns that are focused on who is dividing us. I mean, like, so one example of who's dividing us is big tech, right? Big tech's algorithms purposefully are engineered to divide. They want to take you down a rabbit hole. I'm sure you know people, I know people who've been taken down right-wing rabbit hole, left-wing rabbit hole, and body dysmorphia rabbit hole, right? Like jealousy rabbit hole, right? All kinds of rabbit holes social media wants.
Rabbit holes.
Because then they own you, and then they sell you ads for every minute that you're there. So if you just go on and message grandma and chat with them, chat with some friends, maybe have a sincere debate with someone on the other political side, but like respectful, right? They might feel like they're not making as much money off of you, right? I actually disagree. I think they can make money by keeping you happy, but they seem to think that they're going to make you more money off keeping you miserable, and that's why they're doing it, right?
When I call it fog, Adam, I call it fear. Like I said, I said it a few minutes ago, but fear, outrage, and grievance is the model by which a lot of these platforms and a lot of people in media and politics keep us scared. They keep us mad. They keep us aggrieved. It's a real problem out there. Mike, let's bring this back to the protest thing, though, because this is where I'm interested in what you do specifically, Adam, and this is an important thing that I want the listeners to catch on to, is this idea of protest. Like I said in the very beginning of this conversation, this is as old as America. This goes back before the founding of the United States of America. Protest has been a thing from the beginning. And my question for you, when we start thinking about organized, in your case, the business of crowds on demand, things like that, is do you think society is starting to lose trust in the concept of protest, because we hear these things, right? Or we've heard it plenty of times. Those are just paid protesters, and don't these people have a job, and blah blah blah. And you already talked about this a little bit, but talk a little bit more about the concept of trust in the concept, or the idea of trust in the concept of protest itself. Because I think if people lose trust in anything, it ceases to be effective.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
We've forgotten what it feels like to have a real conversation. Social media algorithms and comment sections reward outrage over understanding. It's time to escape the feed. The week of August 10th, join all sides for a live conversation about the American dream, how we're thinking about it, and navigating the challenges. With a format designed to foster respectful dialogue, you'll hear perspectives you won't find in your feed. Your insights will be anonymized and included in a report to help leaders better understand how people see this issue. No hot takes, just real ones. Sign up today at allsides.com/derate-hate.
Well, I don't think it ceases to be effective, but I think that the dynamics of protests have changed. So that is true. So for better or for worse, because, by the way, paid protesting is not new. I didn't invent the concept. I promise. I mean, don't give me more credit than I'm due, right? Believe me, the idea of paid protesting and the idea of influence groups and of key players trying to co-opt movements for their own benefit is also nothing new. So I don't want to take more credit than I'm due on that part. What I will say is I think people, and look, I almost do feel that I did have a role in this, is because of like what we do, people do regularly, because I've been out in the media, people are regularly throwing out the concept of paid protest as an insult. I've went over earlier in the program why I think that's stupid, because both sides do it, and because the people who are being paid are actually like more representative, if anything, of the people, of ordinary people than the others. But you're asking about trust, and what I think the new purpose of protest is more to get media attention from your side and social media attention from your side rather than to be a broad convincing force. So that is the difference. So if you look at the civil rights movement and the march on the Edmund Pettus Bridge, for example, where peaceful protesters were confronted by the viciousness of the Jim Crow law enforcement, right? And everyone saw on the big three networks, the ABC, CBS, NBC, in live color, the brutality of the Jim Crow regime, right? And Mr. and Mrs. America, the ordinary people who might not be super one way or the other, not political, could see what the Jim Crow law enforcement was doing to the black people in this country and could see that that was a true injustice. And that is what helped move the tide of the country towards civil rights, is ordinary, non-political people seeing that in live color and then saying, look, this is wrong. This is an abomination. Right. That is harder to do today because media is siloed. Your media, whatever your side is going to cover your protests very favorably. And that is then going to be amplified in your social media. So whether that's right-wing, left-wing, MAHA, progressive, socialist, whatever that lane is that you occupy, your lane is going to amplify it. But people not in your lane are going to find the dumbest people in the crowd and ridicule them and make it look like all the people are dumb. They're going to find the dumbest or most radical slogans and they're going to cut it down. They're either going to do that or they're going to ignore it entirely.
They're going to make that caricature. They're going to make that caricature the definition of the whole protest itself, or the whole action itself.
On the other hand, so all that is true. On the other hand, one beautiful thing protests can do, but it has to be relentless, it has to be regular, is convince people IRL, in real life. So your capacity to convince people on social media or in the media who are not currently in your lane is limited. But if I am walking by a protest and I see a respectful, reasoned protest on a side that I disagree with, maybe I can be convinced. You see what I'm saying? Or certainly if I'm on the fence. So there is a capacity. And in this world of AI and social media and everything is online, there is this value of being like, hey, we can reach you in person. There's not much you can often do to reach people who are in a silo if you're on the other silo. But protest is actually one of those ways you can do it. But it is a little harder because you don't have the capacity that you did, like in the civil rights movement. Like if you were to try to build the civil rights movement today, would it be as easy to do? Not easy, because it was obviously difficult, but would it have been as easy to convey that point of the brutality of Jim Crow law enforcement as it was then? Not sure, because you could in that case you could have had people on YouTubers, like, and you see this all the time, like Jordan Kleber of The Daily Show will go to MAGA rallies and pick the dumbest people and make them look stupid. Plenty of right-wing YouTubers, Nick Shirley or whoever, like, will go to left-wing events and try to, Jesse Waters kind of got his start doing that.
He got it, doing the, when he was with Bill O'Reilly.
So
that man on the street just outraged.
There's a big industry of doing that. So Jesse Waters was kind of early in that field, but now there's plenty of YouTubers who will do this on both sides. And my point is that it's really hard. It's harder to break through that now. So that's how it's really changed. And I think that saying, paid protest, it's kind of a cop out, because it's just so funny because Joe Rogan critiques my business all the time, and it's like, dude, you're criticizing somebody for getting $100, $200 for paid for protesting when you're getting $100 million, and we're supposed to expect that Joe Rogan is genuine and he's criticizing he's saying that $100, $200 will lead people to sell out when he's claiming he's genuine at 100 million. So that doesn't, it's a kind of a classist argument.
Yeah, and I try not to ascribe motives to anybody, but I think I think your point is well taken, and it's important to say that. And here's the thing about this, Adam, is I think people need to be able to draw that distinction between what is a paid protester and what is a paid agitator, because I think there are two very different things.
Well, first of all, though, Wilk, if you are agitating, and by agitating, I want to be clear with our definitions, is doing something unlawful in theoretical furtherance of a cause, right?
Yeah.
So I say theoretical because I don't think it serves the cause. But if you're lying in a road, if you're throwing a brick, whatever, you're an agitator. If you're looting, you're an agitator, right? So if you're an agitator, I don't care if you're paid or not paid. I want you punished. I guess the problem that is inherent if you're a paid agitator is who is paying you, and you've got to go up the chains. I mean, I've offered to the government my help, and they haven't accepted it in fighting the paid agitators, because I don't want that, because people falsely ascribe that to me, like completely falsely. So I want to crack down. What they're not doing is going up the chain. And it's a big mistake, because what you need to say is, okay, someone got paid $1,000, $2,000 to do something illegal. Okay, well, who paid you? Well, who paid them? Who paid them? Go up the chain and find out. So that's the more concerning part about these paid agitators, is who is paying them, and is there an industry of, because they don't have a corporate website, they don't have an LLC,
right,
so you're going to have to actually do old-fashioned police work to actually get at who is the root source of that.
Yeah, you're not gonna get some philanthropist out there that is got an open ad out there on Facebook Marketplace for come break the law for me, right?
No, I mean, and when you see those ads, those are all just fake, done for media clicks.
No, I was making a joke, but it's and like I said, there's a distinction made, and I think you've made a bunch of incredible points here, Adam, and this is something far more than we can get into in a half-hour conversation. Yeah. But the reason that I wanted you to come on is because, like I said, there's just far too many people out there that will dismiss. This is the reason that I brought up the trust thing, and people's willingness to think beyond just the headlines and think beyond the rage bait, right? And to what this crowds on demand thing is, what paid protesting actually is, as opposed to what it's portrayed as. Because again, just like so many things that we talk about, I talk about here on the D-Rate the Hate podcast, what we talk about in the depolarization space in general, is there's far more nuance than you're going to find in just your general outrage headlines and things like that. And what you're doing here, I think, is important. And I love drawing that distinction between what the difference is between a paid protester and a paid agitator, and how we actually get our messages across. Because, as I've talked about plenty of times, what is our desired outcome? Because if you're out there and you're throwing rocks and bottles and things like that, you're not going to win. Adam, tell the D-Rate the Hate listeners where they can find more about you. I know Crowds on Demand is your organization, where they can find out more about you and see more of the kind of the work that you're doing, so that they can find out for themselves and clear up a lot of the misconceptions.
Crowdsondemand.com. That's crowdsondemand.com. Feel free. We're always interested in bringing in more people, and also taking on interesting campaigns, ideally something that's kind of nuanced and that requires, I like to say, when the legal system is too slow, when the government system is rigged against you, protest is the avenue that you have as American to fight for your rights, within the confines of the law. So use your right.
Very good. Yes, people need to use their rights, and again, protest is as old as the country itself, and even older. So I appreciate your time today, Adam. It's been great getting to know a little bit about you, and we will talk again. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Friends, I want to thank you so much for tuning in. And if there's anything in this episode that provided exceptional value to you, please make sure to hit that share button. If you haven't done so already, please be sure to subscribe to get the D-Rate the Hate podcast sent to your email inbox every week. We really are better together, so please take a moment to visit braverangels.org and consider joining the movement towards civic renewal and bridging our political divides. This is Wilk wrapping up for the week saying get out there, be kind to one another, be grateful for everything you've got, and remember, it's up to you to make every day the day that you want it to be. With that, my friends, I'm going to back on out of here, and we will catch you next week. Take care.